we have this, we have the Watcher character. It doesn't strike me as that important given the function that the Watcher has in the plays. But like, do you think there are any flaws that you could point to in the character
of the Great Watcher?
Yeah, flaws or anything that truly humanizes him beyond this. He says all the time, like, I'm not a god. Don't think of me as a god. I'm just a writer. I'm this, I'm that. But in the context of the play, he does have these godlike abilities, and that's kind of hard to shake off as you're reading it. Like, is there anything about him that is sort of like truly humanizing or presents him as a character with flaws? Like in true life, you are kind of like the arbiter of your own universe there, but there's definitely plenty of situations where clearly you acted in a way that you might now regret, or this is a character with flaws. Like, is the Watcher in a similar vein?
Well, I mean, the Dan Schneider of True Life, number one, that's a memoir versus an outright dramatic fiction here. The Watcher is we don't know much about him really. I mean, yes, people who know who maybe would be scholars of Dan Schneider's plays at this point could pinpoint some connections between earlier Danny Wagner appearances in plays and here. But I mean, here you could argue that it all takes place in the Watcher's mind. At the end, he walks away with Sir Gawain and says, you were always my favorite character, or something to that effect. So I think there is a human side of it. I'm satisfied with the plays. The Great Watcher seems to be satisfied with what he has done in the plays. So, I mean, it's up to the reader, to you, or the people who would hopefully one day see this. I'll probably never see this play being performed, unfortunately, or these plays. Hopefully, some of the plays will, but I'm satisfied with it. You could always nitpick something that you don't like about something or whatnot. I mean, it's harder, I think, to make a literary case against something. I mean, maybe I should have had a little bit less intrusions. On the other hand, I think you need to have a kind of willful guy who was someone, if you look at Danny Wagner or the Great Watcher as the godlike figure here, the Jewish God is flawed. Maybe he should have made a more passive Camelot universe. But then again, he says he's trying to improve the Camelot universe. So we would have to take it as he's trying to improve it artistically, not necessarily ethically, not necessarily make the characters better characters or human characters, but better characters in the sense of their dramatic or their overall artistic arcs. And I don't think you could make, if you read these 5 plays first and then read most of Thomas Malory or Tennyson or the Vulgate cycle, or I think most people would be disappointed with what came first. They'd say, well, wait a minute. When my first introduction to these characters was in this Camelot quintet, and they're much better characters. I think you'd have to say that for 97, 98% of the scenes and characters. Maybe 1 or 2 things you would disagree with, and maybe you would be relieved that there is no Great Watcher in the rest of Arthuriana. But I think overall, they are, without a doubt, this is a better, more coherent, more consistent universe unto itself that pays homage to some of the earlier stuff, but it's certainly more consistent, it's certainly more logical, it's certainly more realistic to the degree that any play that has this metafictive fourth wall breaking aspect could be realistic.
Yeah, and this the same applies to, like, you're saying that if you're coming into, like, the original tales by way of the Camelot quintet, people would be disappointed in the same way that I'm sure that so many of the writers originally involved in, like, the original Arthur legends, later on people were reading them, and after a while, like, they must have gotten tired of it, right? They must have said, we need to do something else. Like, this is getting too stale. This is getting too old. And yeah, that's just an example of this. You know, this is just how the arts work and how they move over a long enough period of time.
Yeah, and I'm satisfied with it. I would say I've done a handful of series of plays. I'm halfway through my Tetramal plays on evil people that I knew in real life. I did 6 Odyssey and Oracle plays. I'm satisfied with that. The plays that I did, my initial first 3 plays, the Infidelity Trilogy, I'm satisfied with that. I'm satisfied with the great plays of Sargon, Cyrus, and Alexander, and I'm satisfied with the great Khan plays. There are characters that pop in and out of plays that I'll get to again. I'm going to eventually do a Tamerlane play. I want to do a play on Joe Hill, the communist from the early 20th century in America. I want to do my 3rd and final musical. But overall, I'm satisfied with the plays. I would say if you picked any 5 or 6 plays at random from that 67, you're not going to find any playwright, Shakespeare, O'Neill, or whatnot, that's going to have as diverse or as great or as, I mean, Shakespeare's lone character that you could make an argument for being, close to being fully human is Iago from Othello. Other than that, all of his characters are caricatures. They're archetypes at best, and they don't act in any remotely humanly ways. I do have some soliloquies within these plays, but they're soliloquies that are far more natural. Again, you can't totally make a play 100% natural, or any work of art 100% realistic, but that's what realism isn't. Realistic-ism, in a sense. Realism is a technique to approach the real life, to give the verisimilitude of reality, but it's not reality. It can't be reality, and that's why it's art.
Yeah, I mean, I would say specific about this quintet, like I said earlier, this definitely has become pretty quickly like one of my favorite works from you, period, right? Not just the plays, but in general. And, when I think of like other playwrights, even like, great playwrights, like I would argue that August Wilson, for example, had some great plays. I read them as recently as like maybe like a year or 2 ago, and honestly, I've forgotten, most of the characters and the scenes, probably because, like, even if it's great, it's not too different from kind of like more typical drama, right? If you do enough reading, a lot of things just sort of like gel in your head, everything just sort of becomes like one sort of mush, which is why, like, if I ever, need to talk about a book or whatever, I always feel the need to reread it. But I get the sense that finishing the quintet, like, so many of the scenes and so many of my interpretations, like, they're really going to stick with me. Even if you disagree with some of the interpretations, like, I'm always going to look at Arthur as, like, this guy that sort of failed to do what he truly could have done in some respects, and ultimately, faced himself in that final battle, that was the ending in that way.
That's a good interpretation. To say that Modred is a darker version of Arthur, and they end up basically, well, in this one, Modred killed him, and it was very important, in fact, for me to have Gawain be the one to kill Modred rather than they basically kill each other, because Gawain is the most complex character in this universe, even more so than Dagonet. Gawain is the character that in my heroic trilogy, he's the closest that I've ever come to, I think, in having a classically heroic character who was then, I think, wrongly turned into not a anti-hero, but maybe a full-out villain at the end. I bring him back to make him a realistic hero. He's still dealing with stuff. And in that last play, by the way, we get the confrontation with the Green Knight. There's the great scene where the Green Knight is just a beam of green light. Mm-hmm. And so this emphasizes that, what is this? Is this the Watcher just doing his hocus pocus dramatically? Gawain seemingly kills it, and the Green Knight, the green light, the spotlight becomes that woman. So was the Green Knight, wasn't a terror beast, was the Green Knight dogging and getting back at Gawain for besting him. In the original Sir Gawain in the Green Knight, the Green Knight is portrayed as having accepted that Gawain has submitted to be beheaded for the earlier, the bargain that he made. But in this one, we seem to see that the Green Knight has a failing of his own, and the Green Knight is not as noble. And Gawain then, all of his angst seems to have been for nothing. It seems to have been a big trick played on him by possibly the only character that, other than the Great Watcher, who might have some kind of power beyond. Or is it just the Great Watcher making the Green Knight like that because he's the Great Watcher and he needs to do that? So that's an aspect too that is one of my favorite parts of the whole thing. And again, I think Gawain is if you take it as a whole, 5 plays, Gawain is in a sense the main character. At least he's intellectually and emotionally the deepest and most satisfying character, at least to me.
Yeah. Well, to me, Arthur was simply because of the fact that, it's just, it's very easy to empathize with what I interpreted to be like this existential struggle and issues of personal failures and always trying to work beyond that in that way. And, you could just easily co-opt that for the purposes of seeing an artist flailing or succeeding. Beyond that, I don't have much else to say. If you have any specific questions, maybe we can get into that.
No, I just want to show you when I do my book. When I do my book here, you can see I'm holding up. It's called Coronet Blue. This is a TV show that's at the center. It's one of the main touchstones of my novel. So I would say if you get a chance, read up on Coronet Blue. And if you want to spend, it's only like $15-16 on Amazon. This is a series very prisoner-like that only ran for 13 episodes in 1965. It was filmed, didn't air till '67, and it's one of those great what ifs. I think this could have been a show. It was better than The Fugitive. The Fugitive is also playing a big part. The TV show The Fugitive, The Prisoner, and Noah Man are also touchstones, and a couple of other science fiction things, but. Anyway, this is guy Frank Converse. He was a guy who was a good actor in the 70s and 80s. He actually appeared in the sequel to Anne of Green Gables, Anne of Avonlea, as the older love interest for the Megan Follows character, Anne Shirley. But this was a very good thing. It always, as I've gotten older, things are coming back to me from the Paleozoic of my life. Things from the 60s and 70s. I get these images that come up from when I was 3 or 4, and this was one of them that I wanted to rewatch. I watched this series in repeats, I think, on Channel 13, WNET, back around when I was 6 or 7 years old, and for over 45 years it was in my mind, but I couldn't remember the show. And then about 10, 12 years ago, the show came online as being a show very much about it was brooded as a show that people had forgotten, and I remembered it from my childhood, but it only came out 2 or 3 years ago on DVD, and I finally got it, and I wanted to do this book, which is called Levels, and this show is very interesting because the 13 episode titles are the 13 sections. I use the same titles as 13 sections in my book, although in different ways. But anyway, that's that.